So I'm looking at the monitor. I'm looking at Jim. I've got Kermit. I got to walk through the door. The first time the voice has ever come out of my mouth in public. It was just the scariest thing you can imagine.
Without further ado, please welcome in Kevin Clash and Steve Whitmire.
So when we walked into the room, there were only 3 people.
Guys, it is so good to have the both of you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to be had.
We're hearing Jim's voice, and the both of you definitely carried on Jim's legacy.
You can stop right there. We carried on. We did a lot of carrying on.
To carry on. No, but I mean, listen, you are part of that legacy. I was talking with Kevin yesterday during a Ninja Turtle panel, if any of you were here. Like, we really did feel a love for Jim and Kevin's contributions and the Creature Shop to the Ninja Turtle movies. And I mean, again, you guys were a part of all this magic, this Muppet mayhem, if you will, right? And, you know, the influence to many avenues that Jim had, and bringing all of you guys in as well to influence so many people over the years. You know, it's very, very strong. So talk a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, it really doesn't mean very much to us, so we're done. No, well, Kevin and I used to joke.
Well, what was the first thing that we did together? I don't remember.
I don't remember, but I know that we used to joke that we must have had the same mom, because we must be brothers because we have almost identical stories.
Totally, and we were joined by the soles of our feet.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, Siamese twins.
Siamese twins.
But we have similar backgrounds.
Yeah.
Really. We were both fans of Jim when we were kids, and we started making our own puppets, and went on to puppeteering and all that. You know, high school times, and and met Jim at roughly.
Yeah, so I met Jim during the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Okay.
I was asked to do it because the Muppet movie had just come out, and so they had the bus from that. And did you do that? Did you do it then? They had the bus for the because they did the parade. They had the bus, and then the main Muppeteers were going to be in the bus, and so they would normally do the Sesame Street float. So they needed extra puppeteers to do the Sesame Street float. So
you did Sesame Street?
Yeah, I did Sesame Street. I had to do Cookie Monster. I had to do. I was like, please give me it. So that was fun.
That was an amazing time frame because it was the Muppet movie. We shot it, I guess, in '78.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the first film for the Muppets. Obviously, my first film too, because it was their first film.
Right.
And I was only 19. I mean, I just joined the company.
So wait a minute,
2 months before.
Because I'm 63. You're what?
65.
Yeah, so I was like 17. I was like 17 when I did the parade.
Yeah.
And they have a big party at Macy's on one of the main floors where all the celebrities, everybody goes afterwards. And I met Richard Hunt there, and Kermit Love was there because Kermit is normally on the top of the float with Big Bird, handling Big Bird on the Sesame Street float. So I wanted to meet him, and Kermit explained, "You go over and talk to Kermit, you talk to Jim, and blah 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 blah." And Richard was really very instrumental in me talking to Jim about possibly being a part of. And he actually told me to stay up. Can you stay up? Not thinking that it was Thanksgiving. And I'm 17. I got to get back home to my family. Because he wanted me to stay up and audition for him that I think it was that Monday or something like that. But I couldn't, I couldn't. And Kermit explained to him, I have a show. I was doing a local television show at the time. And so he said, well, just send a tape up. And I did. And that's how I got it.
Well, kind of the same thing. I was doing a local TV show in Atlanta. I met Carol Spinney, who was Big Bird. Some of you might have met him at conventions. I don't know. And he kind of recruited me into the whole Muppet group. Very similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
I sent a tape to Jim. Jim was doing the Muppet Show, and he sort of picked me up by the scruff of the neck.
But you met Jane. Jane, didn't you?
Well, I was living in Atlanta, and Jane was good. Remember the big Kermit? I think it's still in the parade sometime. The big balloon of Kermit. It was built at a Goodyear plant somewhere in Georgia.
Oh, I didn't know.
So yeah, of all things. So Jane, Jim's wife, came down to approve the balloon. Which I don't know how you do, because I'm sure it was just lying in a pile. It probably wasn't inflated.
It might have been. Maybe it was. Maybe they normally do.
Maybe so. Anyway, so I met her at this little tiny, what was then was a tiny Atlanta airport. and sent a tape, and it all happened that way. But, yeah, we all joined Jim both when we were very young.
Yeah.
He liked getting young people who were interested, that he saw potential in, but who hadn't necessarily developed their own ideas about it yet, because he wanted to mentor people,
right.
Give people his vision.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, because that's the one thing, like you said, you both started at a young age. There's a new book that just came out, Funny Boy, about Richard Hunt, and a lot of the same thing is in there. There's a book signing not far from here a few months ago. I know some of the folks here were at where Richard's sister was there.
Oh, really? That's cool. I didn't know that.
And she talked the same thing about how maybe people were not necessarily as skilled as Jim and Frank, but I'm sure like Richard and everybody else. I know, Kevin, you've said that before. Those were the masters. Those were the guys that you learned from. So what was it that Jim was looking in young people as they came in? Was it the eagerness? Was it just the creativity? Yeah. I mean, obviously, you look at Sesame, you look at Fraggles, you look at the Muppet Group. It's about family. What were those core components that he was looking for in those performers?
That Jim was looking for?
Yeah, because he never really said, he just threw us in it.
Yeah, I think
But he saw something, right?
I think he
saw potential, yeah.
Yeah,
because, through those tapes, he like, Steve and I over the years have done training and auditioning and workshops and stuff like that. So we know what to see, and Jim was doing the same thing. He would get the tape, and you could see potential. And
the funny part was, I know in my case, when I got there, he brought me up to New York at a given point. Right. And we spent I was there for 2 or 3 days, and we put on puppets for 15 minutes or so, and the rest of the time was just spent talking. I think one of the things he was looking for was to make sure that people like Kevin and I were going to fit in with his group of people. It was the group was very important. That dynamic was really important, and he was looking for people who could, mesh into that, fit in.
Yeah. The one thing, and I want to open this up to questions in a moment too. I think we're kind of getting into a resurgence.
That way.
A resurgence and a respect, because we have all these wonderful filmmakers that are in our society today. We talk about our George Lucases, our Steven Spielbergs, for whatever reason, people remember Jim, but the spotlight isn't always there. I think this new Ron Howard documentary, which I think you guys probably saw, people are really once again seeing Jim, because there's always been that fan base, and I think there's like a newfound love again for the work. What are your thoughts on that new documentary?
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't tell you much. All I know is that there's a ton of my home movies in there.
Oh, wow.
Which is wonderful.
I started shooting home movies from day one. I mean, I had a little, silent Super 8 film camera that I took to London with me on the first trip, and Jim loved it. We'd all like stood in front of the camera and do silly things. Then I graduated around Dark Crystal time. Suddenly I could afford to buy the Super 8 camera that had sound. So that was a really big deal. And Jane Henson, I paid for it, but she brought it over to me in England.
Oh, really?
In her luggage.
Oh, that's
she's
cool.
like snuck it into the country, because you have to pay customs if you don't do that.
Oh, yeah.
And I just immediately, right out of she handed it to me, I opened the box, put the film in, started shooting. So I've got all these home movies. Then obviously eventually we were lucky enough to have video. But no cell phones. I mean, you're always shooting with a big clunky camera. And I have just tons of stuff from so many projects over the years. And nobody was doing that. Nobody was shooting behind the scenes. So, Ron Howard's group asked if they could license, the home movies. So I haven't seen it, but I know they licensed hundreds of clips, so it'll be interesting to see what.
No, it's really, really nice. The thing that they've been doing a lot of Q&A with Ron and stuff. Yeah. And one of the main things they ask is, why not, there's so much that you couldn't put in that one doc. Why not do it as a miniseries or something like that? He said, well, that's what really Disney Plus was asked for, is a one movie type movie television thing. So that's how that happened.
Many aspects of Jim,
there's so much, and they really can't hit it in like a tap into everything that he was doing.
100%. If they did like a 4 or 5 part event, that would, and that probably still wouldn't have touched everything either, I'm sure.
Yeah, I suppose they could do more,
Absolutely. So I want to open up to some questions. I know we got a lot of Muppet fans here, so we'll start with you and we'll just work our way around.
So a lot of the things that come with, I guess, like jobs, those like long-term, positions, that is pros and cons. One would be like job security is the obvious one. I guess the con that comes to mind is that, well, I guess it depends. But another that comes to mind is burnout. Has there been any point in time where you're like, man, I wish I could supply my creativity to another production?
I don't ever remember feeling that when I was working.
I remember Steve, poor Steve. We were doing Labyrinth. We were shooting Labyrinth, and Dave and everybody was on Fraggle.
Oh, yeah.
They were on Fraggle, and Jim really wanted them to be involved with Labyrinth. So he said, yeah, come here. And I remember, they were burnt out.
I was dead.
Steve was definitely burnt out.
Yeah.
From doing it, so Steve can tell you the rest of it. But
well, it was mostly just that Jim was, he wasn't heavy-handed about it because he wasn't heavy-handed about anything, but he really wanted me on Labyrinth. And I think I only did about a month and a half on it, and then I said, Jim, I got to take time off, and he was like, but I said, well, otherwise you're going to have to supply, like, pay for my divorce, because I mean, I've been in Toronto for 8 months, and now I'm here for 2 months. So I actually worked on Labyrinth for a short period.
Because it was actually 8 months that we were shooting.
It was a long.
I shot 8 months on Labyrinth, so that would have been another 8 months.
Long. Yeah. And then we were going right back into Fraggle. It was like Labyrinth was like the summer project. It was insane. Jim was just. Everything was just rolling like crazy,
So sometimes
you get tired.
Sometimes a little challenge, if you're involved with every single thing like Steve was.
Yeah.
No, but normally, we had no problem. It was because everything was always different.
Right.
It wasn't the same. Some of the series would go on, but there was always something new that we were doing, and we were creating a new character. So it wasn't like a period where we're not, utilizing other things that we.
Right. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Whoops. I have a quick question for you, Steve. So in regards to Muppets Tonight, do you have any fond memories of performing Mr. Poodlepants and Virgil the Monkey? They are my two favorite Muppets of all time.
Holy cow, Virgil the Monkey. I don't know I don't remember a Virgil the Monkey.
Oh, it was when Kermit, he got his name changed to Virgil the Monkey.
See, this is see that you reach a point in your life where the hard drive is full.
Forget about it.
And you either make some space or you just sit in the corner and stare at the wall for the rest of your life. I have no memory of Virgil the Monkey whatsoever. It must have been a one-time thing.
I think that was the Coolio and Don Rickles episode because the DMV told Kermit he it was copyrighted or something, and then so he had the little cap on and he had like the little.
I have no memory. Mr. Poodlepants I remember well because that character was created by a guy named Kirk Thatcher, who was an incredible guy, puppet designer, writer, director, one of my favorite people. And it came right out of his insanity. So he could do this character, but he wasn't really a puppeteer, so he couldn't really perform the puppet as a puppet. He just had this thing in his head. It was something he did as a kid. And I had to try to make it into something that was performable as a puppet. It was really hard. But he was, a weird character. One of the more obscure things.
I was asked at this Comic-Con, never been asked before, about Howard.
Howard Henduppy?
No, not from Dinosaur. This was from Muppets Tonight. It was, Bill's Pig.
Howard. Howard, yeah.
Yes, it was a butler or something. Yeah, Howard Tutman, yeah. And I was like, okay, I totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what I just knew that he shook. He just shook all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the thing too, and I think that with Muppets Tonight, that was one of the things that they were trying. That's why kind of Clifford got the hosting duties, because you had the core group that everybody knew and loved, and they wanted to try out some new folks. I mean, like obviously Pepe came from that. Bobo.
Right.
A lot of Bill's characters came from that.
Yeah, it was a fun show to do.
Also, Leslie Carrera was doing a bunch of. Well, she did Spamela
Anderson.
Yeah, so it was a lot of experimental on that one.
Good stuff.
Hello, do you remember meeting me last year, Steve?
Yes, I do remember you too.
Yes, I did recommend the Muppets Mayhem, and I was wondering if you actually got the chance to watch it.
Which show is that?
Muppets Mayhem.
The new show?
Yeah.
I have not seen it. It's because I don't have Disney Plus.
No, I showed you how to watch it illegally.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't. You guys are laughing, but okay. I'm not going to comment. They won't let me have it. No, it's. I
want everybody to subscribe to Disney Plus.
I have not seen it, but I will tell you, I miss Lips, the trumpet player.
Oh, Lips, yeah.
One of my favorite characters, and he was just getting really good.
Yeah.
In the Muppet ABC series for his little moments. He was just this crazy character. Yeah, I don't even know where he was going, but I was having
season
fun
of
with
the
it.
Muppet Show did that start?
He started on the Muppet Show. Yeah,
But what season did you start doing?
About the fifth,
What,
because
five, fifth?
Jim said, you should have a character in the band, and he was kind of on again, off again.
Well, that's where Clifford came from too.
Yeah.
He asked, you should have a character in the band. So.
In the yeah, exactly. Anyway, sorry, I haven't actually seen it.
Hello, Steve, Kevin. Now, you guys both inherited very familiar Muppet roles. Steve, you inherited Kermit, Link, Ernie after Jim Henson died, and Kevin, Richard literally tossed Elmo over to you when he couldn't figure out how to put Elmo together. Were you guys ever nervous of the first time you inherited those Muppet roles from your previous puppeteer friends, Jim, Jerry, Richard?
Richard, definitely.
Sure, but it must have been, because Richard was kind of fed up with Elmo.
Well, nobody really knew Elmo at that point. He wasn't, he was just an ensemble of the monsters. They had a red monster, and so one of the writers started writing for him, and Richard wasn't the first to take it on. It was actually Brian
Mule and Richard
Brian Mule,
and Jerry Nelson.
So, no, Jerry never did it, but Jerry did it in some of the little insert songs and stuff.
Yeah,
like
the original "We're All Monsters."
Yep, we are all monsters. He sounded like that, and then Richard was like, yes, 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 yes. He was yelling all the time, and the head writer, Norman Stiles, didn't like what he was doing, and so. Richard knew that, and so he threw it to me, and that's how I started doing it. But actually, it was two segments that was left over that ended that season, and it was kind of like what you feel. I was like, what am I going to do if Richard can't do anything with it? What am I going to do with it? So fortunately, I went back and hung out at my mom's. My mom was a daycare mother, so I watched the kids and what they did and what made me laugh. And when I went back, I incorporated that into Elmo, and then it kind of clicked.
Sort of made sense who he was.
Yeah, it made sense totally who he was. So so it worked out. But I said, fortunately, Elmo wasn't really well known then, so it wasn't like having to to really be married to what Richard did. So.
What had come before?
Yeah. So.
Well, that was obviously the opposite with Kermit because
he was
What about the other Muppets like Statler?
Well, Statler was a little different. Statler got passed around a lot after Richard passed away.
Yeah, Jerry Nelson took over again.
Yeah, and I was never, I didn't like the fact that a number of characters were just getting put on any puppeteer walked in the room. I felt, not that the people weren't talented, but I felt like the characters needed to be assigned to a performer who was going to take them forward. They always had been. There was a person who would do Statler, a person who would do Beaker, or whoever it was. And so, but for a while, Jerry did it for a while, and Jerry was actually the original Statler from way back before the Muppet Show.
Yeah, his voice sounded pretty different in the Muppet films than he did in the Sex and Violence pilot.
So it made sense that Jerry would then take it again after Richard. But most of my memories of Statler were more Richard Statler from the Muppet Show, because that was when I first joined.
Totally.
Yeah.
So when it eventually landed with me, I was actually thinking more of Richard's than I was of Jerry's version. I had fun with that character. All the jokes were written, but the most fun with the character like Statler was in between the takes, because he was kind of naughty. He was kind of a dirty old man. So we would have fun with him between takes, and I would crack Dave up, who was doing Waldo.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
I'm not going to give you examples of what we were saying, but.
Thank you.
I actually have two questions.
Okay.
One question is, how did Steve Whitmire got a role of Kermit after Jim Henson died? Did he like do audition? Did Jim Henson mentor him? Did he do an audition and stuff? And my second question is, in the Muppets Wizard of Oz, remember the part when the Scarecrow, Kermit as the Scarecrow, he gets ripped apart and shredded into pieces, and then his arm gets torn off. Right. Did you guys use how did you manage to use the puppet? And when Kermit, and they stitched Kermit back together, did you use the puppet? You literally shred off the puppet into pieces and remove the head, and you you sew it back?
Yeah, my recollection of it is, and I don't exactly remember, but I think they basically took a Kermit puppet, a single one, and took him apart. You can take his arms off if you want to. So when he fell apart, he really fell apart. You could really make him fall apart.
Yeah.
Am I right? Do you remember you could actually see stitches on him, right? Mm-hmm. Like he was all sewn together. Yeah, so they just took a Kermit and doctored him to be that. He had prosthetic makeup that took hours and hours every day.
Because he kind of looked like a burlap sack.
Yeah.
It was Kermit.
In terms of kind of inheriting Kermit, it was a function of, Jim was trying to sell his company to Disney just before he died, and that all fell apart when he died. It didn't happen for many, many years. But he never talked to me about it, but apparently he had talked to his wife Jane and to Frank about if he ever became too busy to continue to perform Kermit, he had thought of asking me to possibly do it. Because Jim was going into Disney as this new creative person, he was going to be doing all sorts of things, and he thought I might just become too busy to perform. So it wasn't like he planned for me to take it. He just had mentioned that I might, I would possibly be the choice. And it was very shortly after that he died. So Jane knew that he had said that, and I guess Frank knew he had said that. So that's kind of how it came to me to begin with. And I kind of did it on a trial basis. I thought I was happy to give it a shot, and I was extremely nervous about trying it. And it was really just a matter of seeing if it was going to work, to whatever extent I was able to make it work, it was all only because I had spent 12 years with Jim. I could never have done it if I hadn't been around Jim. Because it was so much, it was Jim to such a degree, a certain part of Jim.
Sure.
Yeah.
How nervous were you when, we did that tribute to Jim?
I'm still nervous about that.
Because it was very hard. It was really weird for all of us because that was the first thing that we did.
Yeah.
It was a CBS special.
It was a nightmare for me.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare.
It was honoring. You had Carol Burnett and they had. What's his name?
John Denver, Harry Belafonte, everybody.
And so what?
Spielberg was in.
Spielberg, yeah.
And so we were shooting that. And that was the first thing we did.
Right.
And the weight was on Steve because this was the first time that we were gonna that Kermit was gonna actually be there. And what was interesting is the whole thing was all the Muppets were reading letters about the loss of Jim,
which is hard enough.
And then all of a sudden, the door swings open and there's. Kermit,
okay.
You've seen Kermit.
So let me tell you my point of view on that. I'm back there sweating bullets because I'm about.
That's what I want to ask you.
I knew I was going to be probably taking on Kermit. So I had this fantasy that it would just be this dark little studio, and there'd be like 3 people, and it would be so easy. And I'd walk in the room, and I'd do Kermit, and they'd say, "Oh, okay, that's pretty good." So it turns out that it was virtually every puppeteer I had ever worked with. Over here, we're doing a bank of puppets.
Yep.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And Kermit's going to walk through the door. I'm over here.
With Frank and Dave.
There's a doorway that's closed. I'm behind it. Every puppeteer I know is out here. And around the doorway are pictures of Jim. So I'm looking at the monitor. I'm looking at Jim. I've got Kermit. I got to walk through the door. The first time the voice has ever come out of my mouth in public. It was just the scariest thing you can imagine. And...
even though all of the puppeteers, you were friends with everybody.
I feel supported.
It was Frank and Dave. We were all there.
Oh yeah.
And this is the first time I'm asking him this because I forgot that because I didn't even think of it. What happened is we all didn't know how we would feel doing something for the first time. And so everybody was kind of anxious. And then all of a sudden, it just snapped and we were back in the working just like...
Back in the groove, yeah.
Back in the groove, just like we did all along with Jim. But the thing that stopped it was seeing
that moment.
Kermit come, that moment when Kermit
Because I know despite everybody's support, they're all waiting to see what I'm possibly going to do. It's like the biggest audition of your life.
Well, it was kind of emotional for all of us, too.
It was very hard to do. And it didn't get easy until Christmas Carol.
Yes.
That was like a time for me that was the first big project where I did Kermit. And so it was an opportunity to really feel the character more and trust my own instincts about who I knew Jim to be and all that.
Also, for it to be so well written for Kermit.
Yeah.
And then Steve got to play silly with Rizzo and Gonzo. It gave him a balance of doing what was right. You could tell that it was written for Kermit, and it really helped him get somewhere as far as who Kermit was.
And Frank was still doing Piggy and Fozzie. Piggy alongside Kermit. It's really interesting when Frank would come in and do Miss Piggy or Fozzie. We did this little practice session at one point to play around. It's really odd. I immediately knew who Kermit was once he was on screen with Frank doing, Fozzie. I mean, it just fell into. I just said, well, I knew what Kermit should do. It was really something. Odd kind of channeling.
It was kind of nice to see, because I saw that with you and Frank with Ernie and Bert also.
Yeah,
you did kind of the same thing
kind of
that
thing.
you did. Yeah.
The one thing, and you mentioned the Disney World special, right? And I think that that's one of my all-time favorite Muppet specials, and purely for the reason, and I know Kevin with Sesame Street, like Elmo and a lot of those characters go out into the real world a lot of the time, So one of my favorite parts of the Muppets at Walt Disney World is watching the characters on screen, but seeing these families behind them, not knowing where to look.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like filming that? Because seeing Muppets in the real world is like...
So they're looking down at us.
Yeah.
They're like watching the Puppeteers and stuff.
Well, I'm just like, what was it like being out there in the real world? So, Christmas Carol or the Muppet Show, all these things, you're in a studio. But when you're out there in the real world holding these characters, what is that like?
I love it.
We had a great time. Also, it's Disney. So they knew how to really fandangle, make sure everything was good as far as the audience, the people that were there, because they didn't want us to interfere that much with what was going on as far as the people there for the amusement park. But it was all structured, and we had a really great time.
Well, the interesting part of working in one of the theme parks is that Disney, as a corporation, has a lot of rules about what, like the people in the costumes and what they can and cannot do. You are not allowed under any circumstances to take your head off. If you're in Mickey Mouse and you get sick in August when it's 175 degrees, you just better get off the thing. You don't take the head off, because you don't want to ruin. It's about the illusion, as they would say, the magic. With us, when we work in public, we just throw ourselves down on the floor amongst the people and are right there. We don't hide. And so there was a lot of adapting on the part of the Disney producers and crew that that didn't bother us at all. And it never takes away from the people. They want to talk to the characters.
They see us as humans every day.
Yeah, they don't. They know how.
They want to see what's above. They want to see Kermit.
Right.
We have time for one last question. We'll go over to this gentleman here.
What I love about puppetry and all the extraordinary things that you've both worked on over the course of your careers is that it can be the most low-tech thing imaginable, or you can be on the bleeding edge of modern technology. I've had a hard time phrasing this very broad topic as a question, but I think, do you have a preference?
I do. A preference between something that's kind of a high-tech thing, and I'd much rather have... Kermit's the simplest puppet in the world.
The funniest thing that I saw that Jim did, and you're going to love it. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Secret Life of Toys.
Yes.
He was up there, he was actually up there with Brian. There was a marionette. It was Dave Goles' clown called Ditz or something.
Ditz, I did his name.
Yeah, and so...
like this, he's really stupid.
Yeah, and it was like a second unit thing. I think it might have been, and so... Jim decided to puppeteer it, and it was just one string. and it's like, you know, it's still, and he's up there, tears of, you know,
it was
dropping on
so
the stage.
funny.
It was so funny. It just was just one string.
Yeah, I think right at the top of the head.
And Jim was always futuristic with everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where Waldo came from, and, you know, the CGI. But he could still go and do just one little simple thing that will put him on the floor, and he knows that the audience will.
He just loved floppy puppets.
So I think we welcome all of it if it enhances what we do, which is, you know, making these characters come to life. You know,
it's true, and it's nice to see all the technologies married together. My favorite thing to perform myself is something super simple that you can put in your hand that doesn't have a lot of mechanics, and it's all about the manipulation of the movement.
And that's what's so wonderful about Kermit.
And Elmo too.
Talked about,
it's just,
but your hand, you know, Kermit has no, you could talk about this, has no foam or anything, nothing other than the hand of the puppeteers in there. And that's why you can do a bunch of different things, because it's just the cloth in the eyes and everything.
Simplest
and
thing
that's the simplest thing, you know. And actually, when Elmo was built, there was no mechanisms or anything. It was just a little wooden bar. There was and little $2 that stick up, and the little, you know, eyes would stick on that, you know, through the fur and everything. And I just started playing around with it as far as, you know, and I could do little things with his eyes, but it comes from the simplicity of it. It comes from how the thing was built. But then again, you know, we had some beautiful puppets that had radio control and everything.
Right.
You know, I mean, Elmo, for fact, I had a radio-controlled Elmo that was not only a radio-controlled Elmo, but it was a radio-controlled tricycle.
Oh, I remember.
And so he could drive home, and you wouldn't know the difference. He would come, you know, what we would do is he would drive, like if he came out on the stage, you know, a little radio control, and he'd come around the corner, and then I'd be here to pop the puppet up. Right. So, you know, the illusion was there. But that was, again, that's the simplicity, you know, technology to, you know, and it when it works, the enhancement of it.
Yeah.
And very clearly, like you said, it's been working for quite some time, because the Muppets, Sesame Street, it's not going anywhere.
There's one more. Can I have one more question?
Yeah.
There was a young man back. Yeah, you knew.
Okay, so it's actually two questions, more like. So the first one is how you say regarding the sort of costume characters at Disneyland, Disney World, whatever.
Yes.
I'm guessing. The thing is that not all Muppets are, you know, like the hand and rod Muppets, I believe they are called. You also have Big Bird, who is effectively a costume.
Right.
So with that, you do have more of like the Disney-like illusion, right? You have where it might make more sense to, you know, sort of have Big Bird the guy stay in the Big Bird costume.
In the costume, yeah.
And you know rather than having to reveal himself.
Right.
And also, and the other question was before Jim Henson died and the Jim Henson Company was sold to Disney, did Jim Henson actually work at Disney, and to what extent?
Did you say was Jim working at Disney?
Yes.
Well, we did the Muppet 3D movie, which is still at Disney World. So there were a few projects that were produced, like you were talking about the Disney World special, the Muppets Go to Disney World, before the sale was going to happen. But other than that, I guess not a lot. I mean,
what was happening is, you know, there's a lot of negotiations that goes on for a big to do like that, and Jim, you know, is very creative, so he got impatient and said, "Well, listen, while you're doing that, can we do something?" And so that's how the Muppets Go to Disney came about, because he wanted to do something. So we got to do that, and it was wonderful. I mean, to see Statler and Waldorf with the tram and the singing the song, brilliant, and that was Jim, and it was wonderful.
Jim,
so those are the only two things.
He loved the theme parks.
Yes.
He loved just being in the theme park himself and walking through the theme parks. He just always had a smile on his face.
He would go there for
loved the
Christmas. He would take his kids there for Christmas.
He loved it.
Because he loved it that much.
Yeah, and the one thing I do also want to mention, and I'm sure the fans know this, that was really the last production that you were all together
The
on.
3D movie.
Yeah. Well, the 3D movie and then the park.
Yeah.
Was the 3D movie after or before the special?
No, it was, Jim started it, and then it was unfinished, so Frank finished the directing on it.
Oh, so it was.
Yeah.
So
It was right in the
it
middle.
was okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
he died during the production of that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'd already done Muppets Go to Disney World there.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
yeah. So that was
Yep.
so the 3D was the last thing actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, Kevin, thank you so much for your contributions. Our childhood. Round of applause for Steve Whitmire, Kevin Clash, everybody.
Thank you all for coming this late in the Comic-Con.
Take care.
This is Debbie Derryberry, and you're watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, geniuses know you need to have fun and follow your fandom. Got a blast!